There was a time when ice cream wasn't just a dessert, it was an event. For generations of Americans, the freezer aisle was a place of wonder. Brightly colored cartons lined the shelves, each promising a sweet adventure. Some flavors became household staples: vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, reliable old friends that never left our side. But in between those classics, there was a hidden world of creativity. Flavors that seemed bold, daring, even a little strange. Some of these creations were fleeting, lasting just a season or two. Others held on for decades, becoming beloved traditions before slowly slipping away. Whether they disappeared because of changing tastes, corporate decisions, or simply being too far ahead of their time, each of these lost flavors carries a story. When we remember them, we don't just recall the taste, we remember where we were. A summer night on the front porch with a melting cone. A road trip stop at Howard Johnson's. The jingle of the ice cream truck echoing down a suburban street. These memories remind us that food isn't only about flavor. It's about feeling, about moments, about the America we grew up in. Today, we're opening the freezer door of the past. We'll look back at 20 classic ice cream flavors that no longer exist, flavors that made us smile, sparked debates, and, for a brief moment in time, defined what dessert meant in America. Some were strange. Some were groundbreaking. And all of them are unforgettable. Let's begin with one that mixed a little bit of cream, a little bit of rebellion, and a whole lot of nostalgia. Point 1. Ben & Jerry's White Russian. It wasn't your typical scoop. In the late 1980s, Ben & Jerry's rolled out a flavor inspired by the classic cocktail, the White Russian. Imagine creamy coffee ice cream swirled with Kahlua liqueur flavoring. It was bold, grown up, and just a little mischievous. At the time, Ben & Jerry's was known for pushing boundaries. This wasn't vanilla or chocolate. It was a flavor that made you feel like you were in on a secret. College students and young adults loved it. It was the perfect late-night indulgence, the kind of flavor you kept in the freezer for when friends stopped by. But by the mid-1990s, something changed. The flavor quietly disappeared, leaving fans scratching their heads. Some say it was because sales slowed. Others whisper it was the alcohol-inspired theme that drew too much controversy. Whatever the reason, White Russian melted away, leaving only memories. For those who tasted it, though, it wasn't just ice cream. It was a flavor that captured a cultural moment, when indulgence met rebellion and dessert came with a wink. And it was just the beginning of the many flavors we'd lose along the way. Point 2. Breyer's Viennetta. It looked like something out of a European cafe. In the early 1990s, Breyer's introduced Americans to Viennetta, a frozen dessert that wasn't just ice cream. It was elegance in a box. Layer upon layer of creamy vanilla, separated by delicate sheets of chocolate that cracked with each slice. For families, Viennetta wasn't an everyday treat. It was the kind of dessert you saved for birthdays, anniversaries, or Sunday dinners. The commercials promised sophistication, telling us we could bring a touch of luxury to our own kitchens. For a while it worked. Viennetta became a symbol of a new kind of frozen indulgence. But then, almost as quickly as it arrived, it disappeared. The price was higher than a simple carton of ice cream, and for many families, the everyday elegance didn't fit into everyday budgets. By the late 1990s, it quietly vanished from most American freezers. Those who remember it still talk about that first slice, how the chocolate cracked, how it felt like something fancy, even if you were just in your pajamas at home. It was a taste of affordable luxury, one that melted away before most of us were ready to say goodbye. And while Viennetta promised sophistication, the next lost flavor was pure Americana, simple, sweet, and dipped in golden nostalgia. Point 3. Dairy Queen Butterscotch Dipped Cone. Few things say summer like pulling up to Dairy Queen. For many, the highlight wasn't just a soft-serve cone, but the moment it was dipped, the ice cream cloaked in a hard, sweet shell. While chocolate was always king, there was a time when butterscotch ruled alongside it. The butterscotch dip cone first appeared in the 1950s, offering a golden, caramelized sweetness that set it apart. Kids loved watching the magic happen. Soft serve plunged into a vat of golden syrup, then lifted out, hardened and glossy in seconds. The first bite was always the best, a crisp shell cracking to reveal soft vanilla inside. For decades, butterscotch was a loyal companion to chocolate. But sometime in the 2000s, it quietly began to vanish from menus. Some stores still offered it, but nationwide, it was disappearing fast. By the 2010s, many younger customers had never even heard of it. The loss of the butterscotch dip wasn't just about flavor. It was about ritual, about summer nights and sticky fingers, about being 10 years old and feeling like you'd found treasure. Today, it survives only in scattered locations and in memory. And while butterscotch cones vanished quietly, the next flavor was once bold, strong, and tied to the very roots of American ice cream tradition. Point 4. Eddie's/Dreyer's Black Walnut Ice Cream. There was a time when black walnut ice cream was everywhere. Eddie's and Dreyer's, two beloved American brands, carried it for decades. Made with the distinct, earthy flavor of black walnuts, a nut native to North America, this wasn't a flavor for everyone, but those who loved it swore by it. During the Great Depression, black walnut ice cream offered something simple yet rich. Families who foraged for walnuts in rural America could connect to a taste that was both familiar and comforting. Through the 1950s and 60s, it became a staple in grocery stores, tucked between butter pecan and mint chocolate chip. But as time passed, taste shifted. Exotic flavors took over freezer aisles: cookie dough, fudge brownie, caramel swirls. By the 2000s, black walnut was no longer a priority. It was discontinued, leaving behind an older generation who still longed for that earthy, nutty scoop. For many, the disappearance of black walnut wasn't just the loss of a flavor. It was the fading of a simpler America, one where ice cream wasn't about indulgence, but about homegrown familiarity. And if black walnut reminded us of tradition, the next lost ice cream bar brought us right back to the jingling bells of the neighborhood ice cream truck. Point 5. Good Humor Toasted Almond Bar. The sound of the ice cream truck meant freedom. And for many kids, that freedom came wrapped in almond crumbs. The Good Humor Toasted Almond Bar was a legend of the 1960s and 70s. Vanilla ice cream, coated in a crunchy almond crumb shell with a rich almond-flavored center. It was texture, flavor, and nostalgia all in one. Toasted almond wasn't the flashiest choice. While other kids grabbed Rocket Pops or chocolate eclairs, the toasted almond was for those with a more grown-up palate. But it had its loyalists. To them, it was the perfect balance: nutty, creamy, never too sweet. By the 2000s, though, shelves began to change. Ice cream trucks carried fewer varieties, and supermarkets streamlined their selections. Toasted almond faded into the background, eventually disappearing almost entirely. Fans were heartbroken, and online petitions popped up demanding its return. For those who remember it, the toasted almond wasn't just a frozen treat. It was a piece of childhood summers, sitting on the curb, legs dangling, while the sun slowly melted both ice cream and time. And while the toasted almond left us craving one more bite, the next lost ice cream memory wasn't about the ice cream truck at all. It was about the diners and roadside restaurants that defined mid-century America. Point 6. Howard Johnson's 28 ice cream flavors. Before Baskin-Robbins promised 31 flavors, there was Howard Johnson's. Along America's highways in the mid-20th century, no road trip was complete without a stop at this iconic chain. Families piled into orange-roofed restaurants, knowing that inside, they could choose from 28 flavors of ice cream. The selection wasn't just vanilla and chocolate. Howard Johnson's offered maple walnut, fruit salad, butter pecan, and even frozen pudding, flavors that felt both adventurous and comforting. For kids, it was paradise. For parents, it was a reward after miles of driving. At its peak in the 1960s, Howard Johnson's was the largest restaurant chain in America. But by the 1970s, fast food giants took over, and roadside diners slowly faded away. Along with them went those quirky ice cream flavors that once made the chain famous. For those who grew up in that era, the memory of standing at a Howard Johnson's counter, staring at all 28 choices, was pure magic. Today, it's a reminder of a road trip culture that's all but gone. And while Howard Johnson's offered variety, the next story is about an experiment that barely saw the light of day, an ice cream that came from one of the biggest names in fast food. Point 7. McDonald's McDLT Ice Cream Sandwich Test. It sounds like an urban legend, but it happened. In the 1980s, McDonald's, already famous for fries, burgers, and shakes, quietly tested an ice cream sandwich in select markets. Designed to compete with convenience store novelties, it paired vanilla ice cream between soft chocolate wafers, wrapped in the familiar McDonald's branding. For kids, it was exciting, a frozen treat from their favorite burger joint. But the experiment never made it to national rollout. Some say it was because it didn't stand out in a crowded dessert market. Others point to storage and melting issues in restaurants not designed for frozen novelties. Whatever the reason, the McDonald's ice cream sandwich vanished almost as soon as it appeared. Today, only scattered ads and faint memories remain, leaving fans to wonder what could have been. If Howard Johnson's represented roadside tradition, McDonald's ice cream sandwich was a reminder that even the biggest names sometimes fail at reinvention. And speaking of reinvention, our next story belongs to a regional dairy brand whose forgotten flavors once defined everyday American life. Point 8. Sealtest ice cream flavors. For much of the 20th century, Sealtest was a household name. Their ice cream was sold in groceries and corner dairies across America, and their flavors reflected mid-century tastes: peach, butter brickle, eggnog, lemon custard. Each one carried the promise of homegrown comfort. Sealtest wasn't flashy. It wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. Instead, it offered consistency, reliability, and flavors that tied directly to family traditions. Many baby boomers remember Sealtest cartons in their parents' freezers, symbols of Sunday dinners and backyard gatherings. But by the 1980s, national brands like Breyers and Häagen-Dazs dominated, and regional dairies, like Sealtest, struggled. The brand faded, and with it, entire flavor lineups disappeared. Sealtest's story isn't just about lost flavors. It's about the loss of local identity in American food, the shift from small dairies to corporate uniformity. And while Sealtest carried regional pride, the next flavor was all about pure fun, brightly colored, sugar-packed, and loved by kids across the South. Point 9. Blue Bell Cotton Candy Ice Cream. In the 1990s, Blue Bell captured childhood in a scoop. Cotton candy ice cream was neon pink and baby blue, tasting exactly like a carnival spun into a cone. For kids, it was magic. For parents, it was a sugar overload, but one that made birthdays and sleepovers unforgettable. It wasn't sophisticated. It wasn't subtle. But it was joy in a bowl. In southern states where Blue Bell reigned supreme, cotton candy ice cream became a symbol of childhood summers. But as tastes matured, sales slowed. Critics called it too sweet, and by the 2000s, cotton candy quietly disappeared from most shelves. A few regional revivals surfaced, but the original was gone. For those who grew up with it, the loss feels like losing a piece of innocence. The days of roller rinks, arcade tokens, and birthday parties where sugar ruled the night. And while cotton candy was about kids and fun, the next lost flavor was darker, richer, and carried a touch of playground legend. Point 10. Good Humor Chocolate Eclair Bar. The crunch, the fudge center, the name itself, chocolate eclair. For decades, the Good Humor Bar was a playground favorite, passed from the hands of ice cream men to eager children. With its crumbly chocolate coating and creamy fudge-filled center, it balanced texture and flavor like few novelties ever had. But like many ice cream truck staples, availability began to shrink. Supermarkets carried fewer novelties, and trucks reduced their selections. By the 2000s, chocolate eclair was gone from many regions, surviving only in scattered markets. For those who remember it, the first bite was unforgettable. The snap of the coating, the soft center, the sticky fingers that followed. It wasn't just ice cream. It was summer, freedom, and the soundtrack of jingling bells rolling down suburban streets. And while chocolate eclair still lingers in memory, our next forgotten flavor came from a place of pure curiosity. A sherbet-like experiment that divided families and made kids raise an eyebrow. Point 11. Baskin-Robbins Grape Ice. It wasn't chocolate, it wasn't vanilla, it was grape. Baskin-Robbins built its reputation on variety, and in the 1960s, one of its strangest additions was grape ice. More of a sherbet than a true ice cream, it was tangy tart and brightly colored, a flavor kids either loved or hated. Parents saw it as a lighter option, something refreshing for hot summer days. Kids saw it as unusual. Ice cream wasn't supposed to taste like grape soda. Yet for decades, it held a spot among the famous 31 flavors. By the 1980s, though, grape ice lost its footing. Americans were reaching for indulgence. Rocky Road, pralines and cream, chocolate fudge brownie. Grape felt plain, outdated, even a little odd. One day it was gone, without fanfare. Still, for those who grew up with it, grape ice carries a peculiar nostalgia, a reminder of when even the most unexpected flavors had a place at the ice cream counter. And if grape was considered unusual, the next lost flavor sparked even more controversy, one that blended sweet indulgence with an environmental message. Point 12. Ben & Jerry's Rainforest Crunch. In 1988, Ben & Jerry's launched one of its boldest creations, Rainforest Crunch. Vanilla ice cream swirled with cashew and Brazil nut brittle, it wasn't just a flavor, it was a statement. The company promoted it as socially responsible, sourcing nuts from rainforest cooperatives. For a while it worked. People loved the sweet, nutty crunch, and they loved feeling like their dessert was helping the planet. But behind the scenes, problems grew. The cooperatives couldn't keep up with demand, and critics accused Ben & Jerry's of exaggerating its environmental claims. By 1999, Rainforest Crunch was discontinued, leaving both fans and critics with mixed feelings. For some, it was a sweet memory. For others, it was proof that ideals can melt under pressure. Rainforest Crunch was more than ice cream. It was the intersection of food, politics, and culture in the 1990s, a reminder that even a scoop can carry a story. And while Rainforest Crunch made headlines, the next lost flavor was much quieter, a grocery store staple that slowly slipped away after nearly a century. Point 13. Breyer's Coffee Ice Cream. For decades, Breyer's coffee ice cream was a constant. Not flashy, not seasonal, just a simple, creamy flavor that satisfied adults who preferred something less sweet. It was the taste of diner coffee with a touch of cream, frozen into a scoop. For older generations, it was a go-to after dinner. For some, it was the first grown-up flavor they ever tried. It wasn't about sprinkles or fudge. It was about quiet evenings, family gatherings, and a sense of refinement. But as premium brands like Häagen-Dazs and Starbucks entered the market, Breyer's coffee flavor lost ground. By the 2000s, it was increasingly hard to find, phased out in many stores. Its disappearance wasn't loud. It didn't make headlines. It just slipped away. And with it went a little piece of the freezer aisle stability, the comfort of knowing a familiar flavor would always be there. If Breyer's coffee was about reliability, the next lost flavor was about fun, a swirl of stripes that captured the imagination of Midwestern kids. Point 14. Toft's Tiger Stripe Ice Cream. In the Midwest, especially Ohio, there was once a flavor called Tiger Stripe. Made by Toft's Dairy, it combined bright orange ice cream with thick ribbons of chocolate fudge, creating a striped effect. For kids, it was pure magic, a treat that looked as exciting as it tasted. Tiger Stripe was part of a wave of regional creativity in the mid-20th century, when dairies competed to stand out with bold new flavors. For locals, it became a childhood memory tied to fairs, soda fountains, and hot summer afternoons. By the 1970s, though, Tiger Stripe had mostly disappeared, replaced by national brands that didn't carry such regional specialties. Today, only whispers of it remain, old advertisements, family stories, and the occasional revival attempt. For those who tasted it, Tiger Stripe wasn't just ice cream. It was the thrill of color, of novelty, of being young. And while Tiger Stripe brought color to everyday life, the next lost flavor carried an unmistakable holiday glow. Point 15. Sealtest Peppermint Stick. Every December, Sealtest Dairies rolled out a holiday classic, peppermint stick ice cream. Bright pink, studded with bits of crushed candy cane, it turned ordinary scoops into Christmas magic. Families looked forward to it every year, serving it alongside cookies, pies, and hot cocoa. For children, peppermint stick was a signal that Christmas had truly arrived. For parents, it was tradition, one of those little touches that made the season special. The flavor wasn't just about taste. It was about memory, ritual, and celebration. But as Sealtest declined in the 1980s, peppermint stick vanished with it. Other brands offered holiday flavors, but none quite matched the charm of that original pink scoop. Today, the memory of peppermint stick brings back more than ice cream. It recalls candlelit windows, carols on the radio, and snowy nights when the world felt simple and safe. And if peppermint stick was tied to holiday joy, the next flavor was something stranger, a banana and fudge creation that tested the boundaries of America's sweet tooth. Point 16. Howard Johnson's Banana Fudge. At its peak, Howard Johnson's was the largest restaurant chain in America, famous not only for its orange roofs, but also for its ice cream. Among its 28 classic flavors was a curious blend, banana fudge. Creamy banana ice cream laced with thick chocolate ribbons, it captured the essence of a banana split in a single scoop. Families on road trips often stopped at Hojo's, and for kids, banana fudge was a thrill. It was different, playful, and just exotic enough to feel special. It wasn't every day you found banana on the menu. But as Howard Johnson's empire began to crumble in the 1970s, so too did its signature flavors. Banana fudge disappeared along with the chain's diners, leaving behind a void not just in ice cream, but in roadside Americana. Its loss wasn't just the end of a flavor. It was the end of an era, of neon signs, long car rides, and the excitement of spotting that familiar orange roof on the horizon. And while banana fudge reflected mid-century family life, the next lost flavor tapped into a 1990s craze that swept the nation. Point 17. Eddie's/Dreyer's Wavy Gravy. Named after the eccentric hippie icon from Woodstock, Wavy Gravy was one of the most whimsical ice creams of the 1990s. With caramel, cashew, and chocolate, it was as wild and unpredictable as its namesake. The flavor embodied the decade's fascination with quirky branding and counterculture references. It wasn't just dessert. It was a personality in a carton. College students and young adults flocked to it, seeing it as a playful rebellion against boring flavors. But like many fads, its time was short. By the late 1990s, wavy gravy had melted into obscurity, remembered fondly only by those who scooped it up during its brief run. It was proof that sometimes ice cream isn't just about taste, it's about spirit, about capturing a cultural wave, no matter how short-lived. And if wavy gravy was wild and groovy, the next lost flavor was pure Southern comfort. Point 18. Blue Bell Peaches and Homemade Vanilla. Blue Bell has long been the pride of Texas, and one of its most beloved flavors was peaches and homemade vanilla. Simple, elegant, and bursting with Southern charm, it combined juicy peach slices with Blue Bell's famous vanilla base. For many, it was the flavor of summer. Backyard barbecues, church picnics, evenings spent on porches, peaches and vanilla was a reminder of simpler pleasures. It wasn't fancy, but it didn't need to be. Yet in recent years, the flavor has quietly disappeared from shelves. Supply issues, changing tastes, and Blue Bell's shifting lineup all played a part. Its loss feels heavier than most because it wasn't just an ice cream. It was a tradition. For Texans especially, the disappearance of peaches and vanilla is a reminder that even the sweetest traditions can melt away. And if peaches were tied to Southern roots, the next lost flavor was tied to the golden age of soda fountains. Point 19. Borden's Neapolitan Brick. At mid-century soda fountains, one of the most common ice cream novelties was the Neapolitan brick. Borden's was famous for its striped blocks of chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry pressed together into a neat rectangular package. It was practical, easy to slice and serve at birthday parties or family dinners. But it was also symbolic of the post-war era, a time when convenience and family rituals defined the American kitchen. By the 1970s, though, the brick format fell out of fashion. Consumers preferred tubs and cartons, and Neapolitan became just another grocery store staple rather than a special occasion centerpiece. Borden's Neapolitan brick is rarely remembered today, but for those who grew up with it, the sight of those even layers brings back a flood of memories, from candlelit cakes to paper plates and melting scoops shared on the porch. And while Neapolitan was about family togetherness, the next lost flavor took inspiration from a cultural icon, the world's most famous mouse. Point 20. Disney's Mickey's Parade Ice Cream Bars. In the 1980s and 1990s, a trip to the freezer aisle could feel like a trip to Disneyland. Disney partnered with ice cream makers to create Mickey's Parade bars, individually wrapped treats shaped like Mickey Mouse himself. They weren't just ice cream. They were an experience. For kids, unwrapping that little face was like holding a piece of Disney magic. Parents bought them not just for the taste, but for the joy they brought on summer afternoons. But as licensing deals shifted, and the market changed, Mickey's Parade bars disappeared. Disney moved on to other novelties, leaving this particular treat behind. Today, collectors still share images of the old packaging, and fans remember the thrill of pulling one from the freezer. It wasn't just dessert, it was childhood wonder, frozen on a stick. And as Mickey melted away, so too did dozens of other treats that made the freezer aisle feel like a carnival. Point 21. Good Humor Toasted Almond Bar. For decades, the jingle of the Good Humor truck meant summer had arrived. Among its most beloved offerings was the toasted almond bar. With a crunchy almond crumb coating, vanilla center, and a touch of nostalgia in every bite, it became a neighborhood favorite. Parents bought them for the nutty richness. Kids loved the texture, that first satisfying crunch giving way to creamy vanilla. It was simple, but it worked. By the early 2000s, though, the flavor disappeared from most routes and shelves. Health trends, shrinking lineups, and changing demand pushed it out. For many, its loss marked the fading of a simpler time, when a dollar bill and a wave to the ice cream man was all you needed for happiness. And while the toasted almond bar faded away, the next lost flavor leaned into a more playful, soda-inspired twist. Point 22. A&W Root Beer Float Ice Cream. Few things are more American than a root beer float. In the 1980s and 1990s, A&W bottled that nostalgia into cartons of root beer float ice cream. Swirls of creamy vanilla blended with fizzy root beer flavoring made every scoop taste like a soda fountain memory. For kids, it was like magic, the taste of a float without needing the soda. For parents, it was a reminder of drive-ins, car hops, and the golden days of Main Street America. But despite its charm, the flavor didn't survive the turn of the millennium. Sales slowed, and the brand moved back to beverages. Today, fans still recall it with a mix of longing and disbelief. How could something so simple, so nostalgic, just vanish? And if root beer floats brought us back to soda fountains, the next lost flavor brought us right into America's peanut butter craze. Point 23. Ben & Jerry's Peanut Butter and Jelly. At first glance, it sounded strange. Peanut butter and jelly in ice cream? But in the 1990s, Ben & Jerry's leaned into the experiment, combining peanut butter ice cream with strawberry swirls and little jelly bits. It was a childhood lunchbox, reimagined as dessert. Some loved it. Others thought it was too weird. But for the adventurous, it was unforgettable. Sadly, the flavor didn't stick around. Maybe it was too quirky. Maybe it was overshadowed by stronger sellers. Whatever the case, it melted away, leaving fans to reminisce about the time their favorite scoop tasted like recess. And while peanut butter and jelly was playful, the next lost flavor was pure indulgence. Point 24. Breyers Viennese Chocolate. During the 1970s, Breyers experimented with a line of European-inspired flavors. Among them was Viennese chocolate, a luxurious blend of dark chocolate with delicate, layered textures. It wasn't just ice cream. It was meant to feel elegant, even a little exotic. For middle-class families, it was a taste of sophistication without leaving home. Served at dinner parties or on special occasions, it felt like a step above the ordinary. But as the 1980s rolled in, indulgence shifted toward chunky mix-ins and bold branding. Viennese chocolate quietly disappeared, remembered mainly by those who craved something a little more refined in their scoop. And while Viennese chocolate carried an air of elegance, the next lost flavor was tied to America's love for breakfast. Point 25. Häagen-Dazs Waffle Cone. In the 1990s, Häagen-Dazs rolled out a flavor that sounded like pure joy, waffle cone. It combined creamy vanilla with ribbons of chocolate and chunks of sweet, crunchy waffle cone pieces. Every bite felt like a trip to the ice cream parlor, cone included. It quickly earned a loyal following, especially among those who loved the crunch of cone but preferred their ice cream in a bowl. Yet, for reasons never fully explained, Häagen-Dazs discontinued it in the 2000s. Fans were left stunned and heartbroken. To this day, waffle cone lives on in message boards, petitions, and food nostalgia blogs. It was proof that sometimes, the simplest joys are the hardest to replace. And as we close the freezer door on these 25 lost flavors, we're left with more than cravings. We're left with memories of childhood summers, family gatherings, and the fleeting sweetness of a scoop that disappeared before its time. As we've seen tonight, ice cream is more than just a frozen dessert. It's a time machine. Each of these lost flavors, from White Russian to Rainforest Crunch, from peppermint stick to banana fudge, wasn't just about what we tasted. It was about where we were when we tasted it. A roadside diner on a long summer drive. A family kitchen lit only by birthday candles. A grocery run with mom when the freezer aisle felt like a wonderland. Some of these flavors disappeared because tastes changed. Others vanished because companies folded, supply chains faltered, or marketing decisions pushed them aside. But the memories remain, frozen in time, waiting for us to remember. And when we look back, what we really long for isn't just the scoop itself. It's the feeling that life was a little simpler, a little sweeter, and maybe just a little more magical. That's the power of nostalgia. It reminds us not only of what we've lost, but of how much those moments meant when we had them. So the next time you're in the freezer aisle, staring at the endless rows of cookie doughs and double chocolates, remember, there was a time when America's imagination ran wild with flavors. Some lasted, some didn't. If you enjoyed this journey through ice cream history, I'd love for you to join me as we uncover even more forgotten foods, nostalgic recipes, and cultural throwbacks from America's past. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and share this video with a friend who still remembers one of these flavors. Because the more we remember together, the more these stories, and the flavors that define them, live on.